Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to The Landing. Hello and welcome everyone to The Landing. We have a treat, a special guest here with us today. A lady that I have known for a very long time. I grew up in front of her. Well, we met when I was 16. That's when our paths crossed. Okay, let's go ahead and find out who this special lady is. Tell us who you are, where you're from, who your crowd is.
Okay. Gail Gerringer. I am from Off. I grew up in Raleigh, but I had spent all my summers in Carteret County from age 2 on Bogue Sound. My dad was assistant director at Camp Moorhead, and so I had local friends, and it was home to me in a big way. I mean, as soon as I got out of college, I came back, and it was coming back to me.
Wow.
And then I had met Bernie Corwin, who is my former husband, who was a carver, and we started a family. And I had been working with him I'd actually graduated from college as a speech communication major, and really had never done any woodworking. But he was a decoy carver. He had learned from Vernon Berg, who was a Navy chaplain attached to the Marine Corps out of Lejeune. And he started Bernie carving, and Bernie started me carving.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had been helping him do carpentry and some. He was a builder, so it was something that immediately resonated with me.
Oh,
mean, I had never been a hunter. I didn't grow up in a hunting family. My grandfather maybe, but my dad was into sports and not the hunting sports.
Right.
So it was. But I took to it immediately. It was just something that I loved so much. And I immediately started making birds for resale. He had worked for Vernon as I call it a production carver, making birds, for shops and, to really resell. So we were my first birds were little swans. So that's how I got started. And
see, and that's so interesting to me because I've known you always as a carver. And it seems like this innate thing in you. You love it. You love the birds. You love the process. So to know that you come from none of that background, you just kind of, it was
like latent in me or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was 1983.
Wow.
When I first started, 5 years before the first festival.
Wow.
And we were carving and doing shows and putting our birds in, shops and stuff, and doing a lot of travel up through. There were shows everywhere back then, up in the Eastern Seaboard, just Virginia, from North Carolina up to New York was mainly where we traveled.
So because I know that Dad and David Lawrence would travel and go to shows all the time. And they always had something to do. And even picking the weekend for our Decoy Festival, it was because there was not a show that weekend.
That's exactly right. There were shows nearly every weekend, particularly in the fall. And when we first met, was it was the original 7. Had a birthday for your dad in August of 87.
Right.
And they got together and they said, well, other places like Chincoteague had carving groups. We need to start one here. And they called a bunch of people in the area that were involved and collectors or carvers. They called us. They called, it was about 30 of us. We met at the school in September.
Wow.
Okay. That was the first.
See, this is interesting to me because I've always heard it from Daddy's side. Right. I was there at his birthday party eating, with them. So this is interesting. So when they called you and tell me a little bit, you had to be excited that something local.
It was like, yes, we want to be a part of this. I just thought it was just wonderful and wouldn't have missed it. And it was, I remember the people that were there. I remember it was Don Walston and Joe and Sue Fulcher and of course your dad and David. And I remember that. I remember a lot about it, of who all was there. And we met in the library. And then we continued to meet in the school. But you were talking about the date of the festival, and that was the first thing. Your dad was like, "This is the first thing." We figured out we couldn't possibly do it that fall. It was too quick,
right?
And we looked at every weekend, and it was Salisbury and Currituck and Easton, Maryland, and all these shows were every single weekend, and so that weekend, that first full weekend in December, we didn't know how great it would work out.
Perfect.
It was perfect for all those years that it was great for people looking for Christmas, and it was that weekend after Thanksgiving, and that was there was a show in Chincoteague, the Deborah. Was Thanksgiving weekend, because I did that a year or two, and then it was just too much. Right before the festival,
right.
That weekend right before. But we used to do Chincoteague at Easter. When Caroline was little, the Easter Bunny always came in Chincoteague.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's so many good shows that we went to. And
so when you talk about going to shows, because Dad would visit them, but he would not. I mean, he participated in some, but most of the ones that they traveled to, they were just, going and visiting.
Yeah.
And, it's guests. Right. But tell us a little bit, what is involved? Because it's a lot.
It is.
What is involved in when you say, okay, I have a show coming up? What do you have to do?
Yeah, setting up at a show. Well, we did a lot. I mean, I've done Easton, Tom's River. There was a time when we were doing a show in September, 3 weekends in New Jersey.
Oh my goodness.
That was nuts. We didn't do that it was Manasquan and Tuckerton. Tuckerton was another show that we did that was really good, that we enjoyed in September. It's still going on. So many shows are not, don't exist anymore. But getting ready for a show is real involved, because you've got to get the birds ready, and then you've got to have something, a setup, a table, cover your table, do whatever.
It's got to be displayed just right.
You got to display. Yeah, you got to have that display, and then you have to have the birds done. And there's so many times I was painting up to the last second, and it got to be a joke. And I know David Lawrence was another one that when he would do competitions and stuff, and it was a joke that his birds were still drying immediately before on the way to the show driving, and I
hold
felt
it out
that
the
way.
window, let it dry.
Yeah, I mean, I've painted many a bird in motel rooms and at shows, but that you just try to get as much done as you possibly can. But one thing I wanted to mention, Stacy, I started as a carver. Literally,
Now, do you do it? How do you do? Do you
Yeah.
do whittling or do you use a bandsaw?
I started as a power carver.
Okay.
That's how I learned.
Okay.
That's how I was taught, and that's how I still carve. I do some knife work, but I just, 40 years as a power carver, it's hard to break that.
Yeah, but that's amazing to watch. When I see Dad cut down a block of wood and he's got a line here and there, and then you start seeing, I mean, it's so much fun.
Yeah, it is. It's been
wonderful.
Yeah, it's neat. But I think even now, a lot of people that when I set up at a show are like, well, where do you get your birds? And I'm like, well, I make them.
Right.
Well, I make them from scratch, from a block of wood. And they are all my original patterns that I drew. Wow. And I was always pretty much the pattern maker and but painting did not come easily to me. And that, because a lot of people, I think, feel that the ladies are the painters sometimes. I mean, I know that that's true in some carving couples, but I started as a carver. Right. And but this is the thing, if you're a carver, somebody's got to paint them. Right. And so I set about over a number of years teaching myself to paint and when we would go to shows, I would look at the competitions, and I'm no internet, right? Not in the early days,
right? You couldn't go to YouTube and say,
no,
right?
You were looking at books and looking at reference material and photographs and going to shows and looking at other people's, and trying to. I would just be trying to get some. Different perspective at every show. Maybe I was having trouble with the primaries of or painting tail feathers or heads or bills or something. I would be looking for that specifically, getting inspiration.
And that was before cell phones where you could take a picture.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you had to just look and try to, wow.
Yeah, try to remember.
Now, just out of curiosity, and this may not be why, but you said that you started out, some of your first birds were swans.
Yeah.
Was that because they were easier to paint?
No, that was it was funny because back then, Bernie had started with Vernon Berg, like I said, and Vernon had I don't know if it was a contract or some agreement where he was making these birds for a guy in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And so we were kind of filling orders. And it wasn't our pattern then. That was something that Vernon had done. Right. And so we were, and I got to be close to Vernon's family. Unfortunately, he passed away right when I was getting started. But we were still close to his wife, Vera, and I'm wearing one of her pins. She made pins. She's in Neil Connolly's book. They're all in Neil Connolly's Waterfowl Heritage. Yes. In the back, the Contemporary Carvers. Some of our guys are in there.
It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, that was out of 83. He had published that in 83. But she did the pins, and so she was involved in it too, and just a real sweet lady. And so...
Yeah, that got you going.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
If you had to pick your favorite bird to make, what would it be?
Green-winged teal.
Green-winged teal.
That was the year. That green-winged teal was the featured bird the year that we were featured carvers.
Oh.
And I've always liked them, but they're very difficult to paint.
Yeah, that surprised me when you said that.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing.
A wood duck would have pushed me over the edge if you'd have said that. But now, green-winged teal.
No, I love wood ducks too. Yes. But that year, that I had to do so many of them, I just got better at it. I pushed myself to figure it out. And I grew a lot that year in my painting ability. And so that they get credit for some of that. The colors are tricky on a green wing teal.
Yeah.
And there's lots of them.
There's more than you think.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go and looking in there, the different hues of the blues and the greens and the way they mix.
Yeah, and the breast color too is that it's kind of a pinky peach. It's not pink. It's a peach.
It is, yeah.
But it's a buffy a buffy peach, and you got to be careful because it will go pink. And that's not right. Or there's all kinds of colors in there that you just got to.
So when you talk about painting, you're talking about the chemistry of the paint mixing and the colors and the light and the line, and I mean there's a lot of.
There is a lot to colors and mixing color hues and the saturation of the paint. Now I am an acrylic. I paint with acrylics.
Oh wow!
I have tried over the years to master oil. Several times I've tried, and I've got a lot of admiration for carvers that paint with oils. That is not my natural medium. I'm kind of the opposite because oils are slow drying, and I am.
You don't have time for that.
I'm the hairdryer person. Get this stuff, and the blending is different. The blending with oils, but blending with oils is a process. With acrylics, because they dry so fast, you cannot blend as easily.
Right.
Typically,
right.
Wet on wet, which is how you do it with oils. But what came in to save the day for me was an airbrush.
You do wonderful things with
I love airbrushing. Yeah. And I use it. I've worn out so many airbrushes over the years. And I remember one year at Lucky Ducks, I was painting, getting ready for a decoy show in the middle of the night, like 11 o'clock at night. And
when you can see really well, when you're wide awake.
Absolutely, not tired at all. And I had an airbrush that was very fragile. It was an AB, which has a little tiny little needle and a little cup on the side of it. And I was using that thing, and I dropped it, and I broke that cup off. No. And there I was trying to epoxy that cup back on that airbrush the night before the Decoy Festival. Oh Lord, honey.
I bet you have lots of stories like that.
I got some. Yeah, I'm kind of a last minute type. I work better under pressure.
Oh yeah, I've told myself that all my life. I'm good at being last minute. Okay, let's see. Let me throw another question at you. What or who is the most, don't want to say necessarily famous, but the most interesting person maybe that's ever purchased a duck from you? Do you know anybody of that nature?
I can't even, I'm not sure I can think of one. I've had some interesting interactions with people over decoys, I think actually the one I'm thinking about right now that's so funny, a lady snail mailed us a letter.
Oh wow. Like recently?
Oh
wow.
And she is in Pennsylvania. And I don't know, because we sold our decoys to shops and at decoy festivals and through Ducks Unlimited in New Jersey and New York. And I one time we were fulfilling Western New York Retriever Club with decoys for their matches.
Oh, wow.
And that was neat. But this lady somewhere along the line had gotten some of our birds and had a baby duck.
I love your baby ducks.
And something happened to it.
Oh.
And she was trying to find me. And I have a website that's no longer, the email wouldn't work. And she couldn't. She tried through Lucky Ducks and couldn't find me. And she mailed a letter to Lucky Ducks. Well, Lucky Ducks, the building doesn't exist anymore. That property belongs to my oldest daughter, Caroline, and she's put a boat storage facility on it. And I haven't looked in that mailbox in years. And we had a blow just in the last couple months, and the mailbox door blew open. And Caroline saw there was something in it, and she got it out, and we read it, and it was from this lady.
No way.
And so she explained, and she wants a baby duck. And so I emailed her back. She gave me her phone number, her email, and all that. She was some kind of tickled.
Oh, she was.
And so she had been out of town when she got the email. There was kind of a week or two, and I'd forgotten about it. But she emailed me back. She was so tickled, and so I said, I'm going to be making some, and I sent her a picture, and in the email, I said, is this what you remember? And she said, yes. And so I said, well, I'm going to be making some for the Decoy Festival, and I will send you one. And she was excited.
That is so cool.
It was so weird.
Yeah.
But,
oh, my goodness.
But the birds, we do look on eBay for them, and, they turn up. I got one not too long ago from Florida. And I told the seller that I was the carver, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, if we ever find any more, I'll let you know." But they've made their way far and wide.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is kind of.
Your baby ducks. I love them, and I finally got one last year because I help at the festival, and so I go around, and by the end of the show, they're gone. And so I pre-ordered one last year, and I was able to pick it up at the show. I love that little bird.
Well, Stacy, for a number of years I didn't carve. I always kept my table at the show. I was always involved in decoys. I was always buying and selling decoys. But after Bernie and I were no longer married, for a while I took care of after my dad died, I took care of my mom, and and of course, Cricket had come along.
Yeah, sweet Cricket.
She's
your baby girl.
A lot younger than Caroline. They're, she's 25 now. Caroline's 40. There's about 15 years between them.
You took some time off.
I did.
Yeah, you needed it.
Well, and I didn't have, my shop was not operational, I guess you could say. And then I moved, sold that house after my mom passed away. And I went for a while without having my equipment. And like I was saying, I'm a power carver. So you don't just set up on the porch. Right. You kind of have to have that equipment going, and dust collection is very important because, power carving is dusty.
Oh, yes.
Stacy, I got remarried in 2013, and my husband Dan helped me get my carving equipment set up again.
Yes.
He designed and built my dust collection system, and that's been really great. He's not a carver, but he knows a lot about woodworking and tools, and he's just been a tremendous help to me.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Having that support means everything, doesn't it?
It really has. It really has, to get me back into carving again.
Yeah.
It's been so great.
Well, we're grateful for him,
too. Me too. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, Gail, I do have a question. The dust collection system that you're talking about, what does that mean? I think I have a general idea, but what exactly does it do?
Well, it's a big piece of equipment that we have in a shed outside our shop, and it is Dan set it up so that it runs on at each piece of equipment. So I've got a drum sander, I've got a belt sander, I've got my grinder, Fordham tool, and I've got these tubes that come to it, and that's where you turn the dust collector on, and you've got a gate. So you open the gate, and the dust only comes out of that from that piece of equipment, and it it just sucks it into the other room. And it's not, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's so much better than not having it. I still wear a dust mask, but it takes a lot of the that dust away, and so you're not breathing it.
That's amazing. So while you're using that particular tool, it's collecting the dust
Right.
as you're grinding.
Right.
Or...
And not all the other pieces of equipment. You can cut them off with the gate and the gates, and then just open that particular one. And it really has some good suction, and whoop, you know, the dust goes.
That's amazing.
So it's so helpful. I didn't have it in my old shop, so it's been a blessing, because you get older and you're thinking, yeah, probably shouldn't be breathing all this mess.
Right.
Because I still, well, like I said, I still wear a dust mask, and that's the thing about power carving. You know, you do have that residual dust coming off your equipment, so your tools.
Very much so.
So you got to be careful with your, you know, your lungs.
Yes. Oh, that is neat.
Yeah. Thank you. But so,
how long did you take off?
I closed Lucky Ducks sometime after my dad died, sometime in the mid 2000s, I guess, and then probably, you know, maybe 10 or 12 years. It was a long time.
I didn't realize it was that long, because I would still see you at the show.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it's funny because Cricket didn't realize that I was as much of a carver. That had come before her.
Oh, okay.
And then she had grown up when I was doing I was doing estate sales.
Yes.
That's what I had started doing through there. It was flexible for me the time. I could do it. I worked under a woman in Carter County everywhere doing these estate sales for people that needed that service, and I enjoyed it. But I always really missed the decoy carving. I was still in it, like you said. I was still involved with decoys, but I just didn't really make as many, and very few. And so in the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe, I have gotten back. And really in the last 3 years, very just back to it 100%.
How often are you in the shop now?
Well,
working?
I try to do something, you know, every week at least, you know, but I am kind of an all or nothing type of person. And so if I'm getting ready for a show, I'm all in.
Do you make a bunch at one time and then have to paint a bunch at one time? So you're not...
That's the thing. See, when you learn as a production carver, people say, well, how long does it take to do one decoy? I have no idea. I mean, I
can tell you how long it takes to make 20.
A half a dozen or a dozen, or and like when I make the baby ducks, and it's more efficient. You cut them out. You cut out a bunch of bodies, you cut out a bunch of heads. You carve a bunch, you know, sand a bunch of bodies, you carve a bunch of heads, and you put them together, and then you paint them.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, so I end up with, I try to do, when I do birds, when I do the pairs, I'll do 4, 5, 6 pairs, try to do that. And then if I'm doing like the baby ducks, I'm really trying to make a bunch for the Decoy Festival this year.
You need to. They go.
That is so funny.
They're just so cute.
Yeah, that was a great thing when I drew that pattern. Of course, if I tell you I got to tell you, because they'll kill me if I don't.
Tell me.
Where that inspiration came.
Please do.
But you know, when Simpsons had tomatoes, that Simpson farm, in Betty had tomatoes, and they sold boxes of tomatoes, and they would put tomatoes in the local stores, but they had tomatoes that were seconds. They didn't make the cut for the nice round pretty tomatoes. They had something weird about them. They were misshapen a little bit or something. Well, they would sell a box of tomatoes for $8.
Oh, wow.
And my mom and dad would they lived in Betty. And so they would get a box of Simpson tomatoes. Well, one day, they had one, and Mama was so funny. She had pulled out this little tomato that had a shoot going off of, I don't know, just had a little red shoot, like it was a tomato that wasn't perfect.
Right.
And it looked like a little bill. And it had kind of a little head and a little bit. It was where tomatoes had kind of grown together.
Right.
And so we were like, well, that looks like a baby duck.
Oh my goodness.
I am not telling a lie. I drew that first pattern from
that tomato.
From that tomato.
That cracks, because your baby ducks they're fat.
They are fat, little round, and they've got little round heads, and that little bill that comes out, and of course I took that and ran with it. But
oh, that is
isn't that
awesome.
Crazy?
That is.
That is the craziest thing.
But seeing things the world differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm going to go home and look at mine and see a tomato.
Well, yeah, but inspiration is a funny thing. And even, this is part art and part craft because
for sure.
We are trying to take from nature what we see. And, but there's a lot of artistry in that too. And none of us see that the same.
Right.
We're all different.
Which is the beauty of it. I mean, when you go to these shows and when you are able to see so many carvers in one room and to see the styles, the variations, and the way you see a teal and the way the one beside it's really amazing. Yeah. Mind-blowing, actually.
Yeah. And they've taken it, all my career, my carving life, I've seen people that just take and just are so gifted and so talented. But it's, even the rest of us, it's always neat to see how everybody sees them different. Yeah. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, our time is running out, which I could talk to you for so much longer.
That's been fun.
Is there anything else, though, that you would like to make sure that you share or you had in mind to share and I've driven you off course?
Well, I guess how grateful I am to have been a part of this.
Stop it.
This family, all the carvers, all the years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a great life.
It has. And along those same lines, when I look at you, you're part of my family. Yeah. I mean, like, you really are. And you're not just, there's just something special. There's a connection there that's unlike any other.
Yeah, I guess misty-eyed because I have enjoyed it so much. I've enjoyed being a part of it and growing with it, and now remembering, and bringing that to other people, trying to keep it going. Yes. Getting young people involved. That was one thing that I was involved in from the very beginning. It was the 4th Decoy Festival that we had the children's decoy painting event. And
talk about that a little bit.
We've done that. We've done that now since '91, and and it was because Virginia Beach had a children's decoy painting event, and we were doing that show, and Caroline painted a decoy, and it was a little swan, and they put her, she was adorable, of course, that curly hair and all that blonde, and they put her on the news. She got featured on the news in Virginia Beach, and back then it was there was no streaming, no anything. It was VHS.
Yes.
So to get a copy of it.
Yeah.
But she painted that swan, and I said, we need to do that for our show. And so be careful what you suggest.
That explains why you're still doing it.
That's exactly right. It's been 30. We took a year off for COVID that we didn't have the children. Actually, I think we didn't do it the next year. There's a couple of years we didn't, but straight on through, except for that, 35 years of children's decoy painting. And I am now teaching the kids of the people, of the kids that were there back, and gosh knows.
Yeah.
And they come up to me, yeah, I did this. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's unbelievable.
Because both of my kids, I have a section where their decoys that Davis and Dorothy painted or proudly displayed right beside my daddy's. It's like, there they are. But yeah, I mean.
And we're still doing it. We've got
it.
little swans this year.
I love it.
So yeah, that continuity, that working with kids, working with grown-ups, working with being there as a resource.
Yes.
And a family, a group that, I think of it like a family. To me, it is.
It is. It is,
So
without a doubt.
I'm very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're very fortunate and blessed to have you.
Aw.
Gail, I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
Thank you so much for visiting and for being here.
It's been great.
Oh, it really has.
I'm honored you asked me. Fun. Thanks.
Oh, of course. Of course. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
What a wonderful conversation with Gail. It was so much fun to hear about her start and her journey with decoy carving. Please join us next week when we continue this topic with none other than Mr. James Gordon Salter. It's a fun one. Until then, stay safe and be kind.